Have a look at this footage on the right for a second and see if anything stands out to you. If it seems kind of weird and alien that the barrel isn't exploding, then you're probably at least semi-acquainted with video games. You've probably shot a few of these bright red barrels before in your time and blown up many enemies in the process. But where does this knowledge come from? It can't be from real life, because for the most part, gunshots don't just make things randomly explode. My red barrel theory is the idea that there's a collective pool of quote-unquote gamer knowledge that has emerged from the last 50 or so years that gaming's been around. This common knowledge, just things like red barrels always exploding or big glowing spots on a boss indicating a weak point, have implanted themselves in the cultural zeitgeist of gamers. And this has had two major effects on the industry. One, because so many people playing these games now know these mechanics and ideas off by heart, the games don't really need lengthy tutorials to explain everything. And two, this consequently raises the barrier for entry to new players getting into gaming for the first time, as they won't be familiar with any of these terms or ideas. So what we're going to be doing in this video is looking at some of these tropes, looking at how they work, and also exploring any times they've been subverted in any interesting ways. Let's jump in. Let's start off with the namesake of this video, the humble red explosive barrel. According to tvtropes.com, the first appearance of a red barrel that explodes when damaged comes from the 1986 game The Speed Rumbler. In this game, there are blue barrels throughout the levels. When damaged, they'll turn red. If they're then run over, they'll explode and deal some damage. This then turns into perhaps the most common trope in any video game, being an absolute mainstay in shooters like Half-Life and Borderlands. But why has it become so popular? Well, there's a few reasons I think this. The first being that it's so simple to understand and implement that you could put it into almost any kind of game that has combat involving guns or fire, and it would work well. And the second being that red is very much a colour associated with danger, so having these big bright red cylinders makes our monkey brains go, "Oh no! Danger!" And finally, perhaps the most important reason, gamers just love explosions. If you tell me you don't get at least a little bit turned on from watching a room of aliens or zombies being blown sky high, then I shall politely escort you back to your Stardew Valley farm, whilst us real men play proper games. Get down there! This is a trope that transcends even the realm of video games, as you see it all the time in TV shows and films like Casino Royale. It's hard to say which medium came up with it first, but all we do know is that it's here to stay. HUD elements can often go overlooked, as they can appear for just maybe a few frames, or stay on the screen for the whole game so you just stop noticing them. For example, some games do away with the traditional health bar, and just have visual HUD effects to show how much health your character has. You'll find this most commonly in first-person shooters like Call of Duty or Battlefield. This is a much more immersive way to show when your character is close to death, and even if you haven't played many video games before, it's still quite self-explanatory what is happening, especially if the game goes a step further and adds sound effects and things like screen shakes to really heighten the effect. Hit markers appear in a majority of shooters, and are used as an indicator to show when your shot has hit an enemy. You can just imagine how infuriating shooters would be without them, as you could be firing off round after round and not knowing if it's actually doing anything. What I'm curious about is if many first-time gamers even realise what it means, because I don't think I've ever actually seen a tutorial hint that explains what a hit marker is for anyone who might not be familiar with it. So it may very well be the case that people are seeing it, but not putting two and two together on what it actually means. If you do a Google search for this kind of question, you can find multiple people posting on forums asking what a hit marker is, so it definitely does and has happened before. Some games choose to purposely omit them for a more realistic feel, but this tends to be more hardcore type games like Arma. And this actually brings up an interesting point. When can you purposely ignore these tropes to subvert the expectations of the player? Video games have conditioned us for decades now to want new upgrades and new perks. Almost every single game now will have some kind of level up system in it, and we never really think twice about it. You pick your upgrade, and then you go on with the rest of the game, but do you ever actually stop and think about what you're doing to a character, and if it's worth it? Well, this thought pattern is actually exploited against you in Deus Ex Human Revolution. At one point in the later parts of the game, you're given an optional quest to go have your biochip upgraded. I, like many people, didn't give this much thought and just went ahead and did it. However, you're then punished for this complacency, as it turns out this is actually part of the plan of the main villain. And in a later boss fight, one of them is actually able to activate your upgraded chip, which disables your augmentations, essentially meaning you have to fight the boss with 0 upgrades to your character. I love this part of the game, because it made me feel like a complete idiot for just blindly trusting a quest which I realistically should have been suspicious of. A lesser game wouldn't have made it optional, and which had it as a cool story moment to elevate that boss fight. But what I love about it is that I chose that. It was my decision, and then I had to face the consequences for it. They took advantage of the fact that as a gamer, I wouldn't really think twice about gathering an upgrade to make my character stronger,
And I've done it in so many games at this point that it's basically just become second nature. And it really made me think about video games and how I played them differently. Also, I had to look through at least 6 different playthroughs of this game just to find footage of someone who actually took the upgrade. So maybe I'm just an idiot, I don't know. By the way, if you're enjoying this video so far, please consider giving it a like and subscribing, and in return, I don't know, give you my firstborn child. The actual inspiration for this video came when I was playing the game Satisfactory. I was out exploring the world and I came across these boulders. My brain instantly went, oh, I need to blow these up. But how did I know this? There's no tutorial in the game stating this, and there's no big flashing sign above the rocks saying, please blow me up, thanks. So the only way the player would actually know that these rocks are different than thousands of other rocks in the game would either be reading it online or having played a game before that had these kind of rocks in them. These rocks are a perfect example of the red barrel theory, because in almost any other game that has breakable rocks, you will almost always see this same cracked texture on it. Games like Pokemon Legends Arceus and Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild are prime examples of this. So once someone has done this in one game, they'll probably start noticing it everywhere, especially games with breakable walls like the Batman Arkham series. But once again, this is another massive barrier to entry, as if the game just expects you to know this, then anybody who hasn't played a game like this before may just assume it's a normal texture and then miss out on a huge amount of content. That's really the point I'm trying to get at with this video. It can be really easy when designing a game to just assume that your player have a baseline level of gaming experience, and therefore expect them to understand or know things that aren't explicitly told to them. Let's imagine a scenario where your partner or family member comes up to you and says, hey, I've seen you playing some video games recently and it looks really fun. Can I have a go? So you say, sure, and then you load them up a copy of The Witcher 3. You think to yourself, Witcher 3 isn't a particularly hard game, and it even has a story mode difficulty, so for a first time gamer, it should be pretty much smooth sailing. However, they then come up to you after an hour and say, I can't understand why I keep randomly dying. So you look over and you see that the health bar is practically empty, so they're basically just being one shot by everything. So you say, oh don't worry, you just need to refill your health bar. And they say, my what bar? It then occurs to you that they may have never seen any kind of health bar before, so this random red line in the corner of the screen that isn't labelled just means nothing to them. You may be sitting there thinking, well, how could this person not figure this out? They must be stupid. But that's the thing, the majority of the time when people misunderstand mechanics, it's not through lack of intelligence or lack of effort. For example, I've watched one of the smartest people I know play Red Dead Redemption 2 and shoot down countless civilians and then get confused by people coming after them. So many of us grew up with gaming as kids that these concepts and ideas are just hardwired into our brains. But if anyone's trying to get into it later in life, there can be so many concepts and ideas that are just completely alien to you. Like at the start of this video when you watch the barrel being shot not exploding, if you noticed anything wrong, I can almost guarantee that you've played games since you were a child. If I'm wrong about that, then please leave a comment down below, as I'd love to have a discussion about this with you guys. So, how can we help ease new people into this wonderful world of video games that we all love so much? Going back to The Witcher 3, I think overall, it has a really good tutorial. It gives you a good introduction to the combat and lets you test it out in a place where you can't die, and also gives a really good introduction to many of the mechanics I'll be using throughout the rest of the game. But like I illustrated before, it still misses out a few fundamental elements, like showing you your health bar and explaining what it does. Of the 50+ million people who have played Witcher 3, how many do you think played it as their very first video game? Because I imagine it's a lot higher than you think. I'm of the opinion that video games need to have more robust options for brand new players to break down that barrier of entry. I generally see 2 solutions for this. The first being to include much more in-depth tutorials, specifically when playing on the easier difficulties, like explaining how a health or stamina bar works or how a water system functions. That way, the people who are already more familiar with video games and play on, say, normal or above difficulty can just get along with learning what they need for this specific game. The second being to have a toggle and an accessibility menu that turns on more new player-friendly tutorials. Having it as a toggle means that the only people who actually see it are the people that really want it and need it. Accessibility in games has come a hell of a long way in recent times, but I definitely think there's still good ways to go. And one area I think it could improve in is helping ease new players in so they can understand this collective pool of gamer knowledge. I want to make it very clear, I'm not asking for all these games to be completely dumbed down so they require no skill at all. All I'm saying is these options should be there for people who don't want to have to jump straight into the deep end. If you're interested in learning more about accessibility in games, then I highly recommend a video by Lana Pierce about situational disabilities. She works in the industry and is doing some really good work on normalizing accessibility settings in games. I'll have a link down in the description below. Finally, I'd like to bring it all together and give you some thinking points to take away with you. In any kind of hobby, there is going to be a pool of knowledge that most likely will be completely brand new for anyone trying it for the first time. If you're riding a horse for the first time and the instructor tells you to put your foot in the stirrup and go off into a canter, you may very well have no clue what the hell they're talking about. In the same way that if someone's never played a video game before and you drop them into a game of Counter-Strike and start saying, Echo, Echo, flag B, you may as well be talking an alien language. Video games definitely have an expected knowledge flaw that is required to enjoy them, so please, I implore you to help these people out instead of mock and ridicule them. And just remember, at one point, none of us knew what happens when you shoot a red barrel. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching this video today. If you're interested in more kind of game design style videos, then click this video here to watch my video on video game hunger bars. Or if you're interested in more discussion personal style videos, then click here to check out my video on Witcher 3 versus Skyrim and why these two games affected me so much. This one? Yeah, or this one? It is a good choice. It's gonna go to West Echo, maybe you click it. Click it now. Click it now.